We're missing Councillor. Good evening, all. We'll continue. Item 7 on our agenda is agenda question period. Individuals must submit their questions to the clerk's office no later than 1 hour prior to the meeting to the clerk@crami.ca. Questions submitted must pertain to an item on the current agenda and are not to be an opinion, statement, or comments. Any submissions that are not a question or do not pertain to an item on the agenda will be omitted. All questions will be read aloud during the question period by the clerk and/or the chair. And we do not answer them at this point. These are the questions that are raised that pertain to items on this agenda. So there will be discussion of the items pertaining to the questions throughout. And again, I remind that at the end of this session of council, there is a public question period. And that is when any questions can be asked and we will address them. And I understand Clerk, CAO Holly Grant has questions, and there are 5 that have been submitted this evening.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to members of council. 5 questions were submitted. Number 1 is from Pat Ryans. It pertains to item 10 AAA. Before the January public meeting, will the following questions be answered with directly related supporting documentation to facilitate informed public consultation and clarify the need at this particular time to change public access to the Little Lake boat launch? Number 1, what specific liability and traffic safety issues are associated with the public boat launch, and how does the traffic flow past the beach affect those issues, especially since the Black Cat traffic data was not specific to the boat launch or beach, and usage data from the test period may be skewed by westbound commercial vehicles, in brackets, light vehicles, buses per Black Cat data, using Little Lake Road and Telephone Road to avoid the Purdy Road construction work all summer. Question 2, how many complaints does the township have on file addressing safety, traffic, or sightline issues pertaining to the actual boat launch municipal property? And what was the date of any complaint and location of the complainant? 3, what costs to the township are associated with the operation of the boat launch now? And what costs are projected for implementing the staff recommendation for the additional signage? 4, what is the urgency to consult in a public meeting in January about summer issues related to boat launch and beach usage, particularly when meeting participation may be limited by weather or place of residence? And for the same reason, why did the township change the meeting to in-person only when a hybrid meeting was promised at the end of December 5th Committee of the Whole meeting? Second, question that was submitted from Jackie Marie Greenan pertains to item 10 AAA. This question is to council. With the winter weather settling in, would it not be best for the up and coming public meeting in January concerning Little Lake to have the meeting on a weekend, Saturday during the afternoon, to make it accessible to all? Thank you. Third question relating to item 10 AAA from Eric Thompson. What is the number of watercrafts that are launched from the boat launch on a weekend during the summer months? Number 2, will the proposed gate be open in the winter months for emergency services, ice fishing, skating, and snowmobiles, etc.? 3, has council considered charging for the parking at the beach? 4, has council considered revamping the beach area to reduce the liability risks, stairs, adding sand, etc.? Will the township still be providing washrooms and garbage barrels in the beach area? Does the township have blanket liability insurance, and what is the cost to the taxpayers? Question 4, which pertains to item 11B on the agenda. This is from David Forsyth. With the anticipation costs of 2.5 million a year in road work needed, radical and extreme tax increases from the county, along with the county in recession, what are the steps council is taking to keep tax rate increases at 0%? And the last question submitted was from Bonnie Chan, I believe. I'm hoping I'm getting that correct. Good evening. I'm submitting this question in advance of tonight's council meeting. My family and I are owners of a property of Reddick Road. However, we live outside of town and simply cannot be feasible for us to attend in-person public consultation on the scheduled date of January 2024. I appreciate the efforts and find space large enough to hold the anticipated in-person meeting turnout. I'm deeply concerned that the absence and opportunity to participate by virtual means will amount to a denial of access to the meeting of stakeholders like myself who have a significant interest in the issue of the boat launch at hand. I therefore urge the council to consider the available IT options to facilitate a hybrid meeting, whereby those who can attend in person can do so, and those who are only able to participate by virtual link have an option to do so.
Thank you. Number 8 on our agenda is delegations presentations, and we have 8A, Lumex Group, Grace McDonough, Community Risk Assessment. The resolution reads, be it resolved that council receive the delegation from Lumex Group at the Community Risk Assessment for information. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? And then we will hear the presentation.
Moved, Arthur.
Second, Van Egmond.
Thank you, Grace.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Grace McDonough, and I'm here from the Lumex Group, and we are delighted to be developing the community risk assessment for your township. Just a little bit about Lumex. I'm sorry, next slide, whoever. Sorry. It's a large North American group of companies, and we provide strategic and operational services for clients across Canada and the United States. And our goal is always to inspire positive change and to help make communities and organizations safer. This is the Lumex Group team that will be working on your particular community risk assessment. And as you can see, I'm one of them, and I am delighted to be doing so. So just to give you a little bit of context about why a community risk assessment is necessary and a little bit about what we'll be doing. Thank you. So the Ontario regulation came into effect on July 1st, 2019. And basically what that was a regulation that requires all municipalities and fire departments to conduct a community risk assessment before July 1st, 2024. So we will ensure that yours is completed long before that and into the province. The reason CRAs are important is they really identify and examine the risks within the community. And again, we're looking at this sort of from a fire services perspective. So that's how we're approaching it. What risks in the community involve the fire department? And then we develop the tools to help the municipalities make decisions about fire protection and the services, their fire protection services, based on the unique needs and circumstances of their particular community. So there are 9 mandatory profiles to be examined in every community risk assessment. So we certainly look at the geographic features of the community. That's the first profile. Then we look at your building stock. So we're going to be looking at your residential occupancies. We're going to be looking at your commercial occupancies, industrial occupancies. We'll be looking at mixed occupancies, which would be your downtown area where you have commercial on the bottom and residential on the top. We'll also be asking for information about future growth. So what is expected to happen in the next 5 years within the community? Because that certainly can affect the delivery of fire services. We'll be looking at the critical infrastructure, which has just been a real, a really important component of the community risk assessment. All small municipalities are struggling under the weight of maintaining their critical infrastructure. So we certainly look at what happens, and it's more from the perspective of critical infrastructure failure. So what are the implications to the community if that critical infrastructure fails in any way? So we're not looking so much at the maintenance side of it, but at what happens. What is your critical infrastructure? How important is it for you to maintain your community, to maintain business continuity? And what happens if there is an event that causes failure to some or all of that critical infrastructure? We look at your demographics. So we will look at the age of your population. We look at the education levels of your population. We look at the income of your population. So we look at all of that. We look at what natural hazards you might be dealing with in your community. So we're looking at water. We're looking at things that are naturally exist in the community that can cause can be hazards. We look at your public response entities. So we look at who does the community draw on in the event of an emergency, and what do those entities provide for the community. We look at the community services. So within your community, in the event of an emergency, who within the community can provide some services. And that often turns out to be service clubs of some kind who would provide a service in a municipality. It could be something like victim services. So we'll look at who within the community would be involved in providing services. We look at all of the economic factors driving the community. So again, we're looking at income, we're looking at employment, where are people working, how far are they commuting to work, are there major employers within the community, so that if something were to happen and one of those major employers wasn't able to operate, how would that affect the community economically? And then how we gather a lot of this is looking at the past events and lost history. So we look back generally about 5 years into the past. Sometimes we'll look a little farther if there's been a significant event that happened, say 6 or 7 years out, we would consider that. So we'll be asking the department for a lot of statistics on fire loss, on events that they've been involved in the community in the last 5 years. And that gives us our past events and lost history. So understanding risk. So in the context of the CRA, the risk is really determined by evaluating the likelihood of the threat and the consequence level. And the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office states that a fire department should use professional judgment along with historical information about past incidents to estimate how likely it is for a given event to occur. So that's likelihood. The OFM defines the consequence as the potential losses or negative outcomes that result after an emergency occurs. So it's likelihood versus consequences. So how likely is an event to occur, and what are the consequences to the community if that event occurs? So once we identify those risks, the CRAs will allow the municipalities to understand which risks are most likely to occur and which are most likely to have serious consequences. So after identifying the fire and life safety risks in the communities, then you can determine which risks to address and how to effectively manage those risks. So if an emergency occurs and a community has not established an adequate response or response protocols, the consequences could include damaged property, tarnished reputations, and certainly lost lives. So our approach and methodology is, first of all, select